Hey, welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. This is Gregory, your host, and today is a solo episode, but it's a little bit different than previous Q&A episodes. So today I want to jump into some tips surrounding the holidays. We have holidays coming up. Thanksgiving's less than a week away, and Christmas is obviously coming up soon after that. And I've gotten a bunch of questions probably over the last 2 weeks or so surrounding the idea of sticking with your goals during the holidays, not overdoing it. I've gotten a lot of questions about tips that I personally implement and that I recommend for my clients to implement around the holidays to ensure that if you do have particular goals that you're sticking to, or if you just want to kind of enjoy yourself without going way off the wagon. Is that a saying, way off the wagon? Now it is. These are going to be some tips to just help you kind of stay on track with where you're at and where you're going, and hopefully help to manage the holidays. So before we do jump into these tips, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor for the month of November for all Friday episodes. Our sponsor is UCAN. So as I mentioned in previous episodes this month, Superstarch is the main ingredient in all the UCAN products, and Superstarch provides a stable glucose-based fuel while not impacting the body's fat-burning potential, which allows for optimal dual fuel utilization. And this is something that we talk about a lot on the podcast, this ability to use both carbs and fats efficiently for fuel, that dual fuel utilization. That's pretty much the definition of being metabolically flexible or being MetFlex. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me post this many times in the past, but one of my favorite pre-workout snacks is a combination of UCAN Superstarch with about 4 to 6 ounces of Greek yogurt, a scoop of MCT powder, and a little bit of sea salt. So I usually use the chocolate version of Superstarch. So either the Superstarch plus their protein blend, which comes in both a whey and a plant-based version. So I'll either use the chocolate version of that, or I'll just use the Superstarch on its own without the protein, and that would be the Cocoa Delight energy powder. So those are the two that I switch back and forth between those depending on actually how much protein I've had before that, if I have a meal before this snack or if I don't. But anyway, it's that combination basically gives me a perfect mix of protein, carbs, a little bit of fat, and a good amount of electrolytes from the sea salt going into my workout. So again, that's one of my favorite pre-workout snacks. And if you want to try out any of the UCAN products, you can go to www.ucan.co/MetFlexLife, and you can use the discount code METFLEXLIFE for 20% off. I will link that in the show notes, and I'll also add the code there as well. But definitely check them out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. All right, let's jump into 8 tips to prevent holiday weight gain. That the holiday season is probably the hardest time of year to stay on track with our goals, right? Our daily routine is put on hold. Stress is usually a bit higher. Food temptations are everywhere. The list goes on. One of the things that I've realized over the years, especially as I've paid more attention to my nutrition and my mindset going into this time of year, is that if we're too restrictive during these times, it can often backfire and cause a cascade of bad decisions. So what I found is that instead of having a restrictive mindset going into the holidays or whatever, holiday it is, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, I like to have more and focus on having more of a strategic mindset. So I talk about this all the time, but strategy is everything when it comes to reaching and sticking to your goals, no matter if it's, during the holidays or not. Having a strategy, having structure is important to basically set yourself up for success. If you don't have any strategy or structure going into anything that you do, you're just setting yourself up for failure. That's just pretty much the harsh reality. So whether you're planning to stay, low carb or not, if you are following a keto or low carb diet, or if you're not, If you're just looking to make sure that you're not going overboard during the holidays and you want to still enjoy yourself while still being able to kind of stick to the goals that you have set for yourself for this year, I'm going to kind of go through 8 different tips or strategies that will ensure you're not completely falling off the wagon when it comes to sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner, or Christmas Eve dinner, or whatever it is, or Christmas Day. These strategies will kind of help you manage the day and be better off, going into it. And again, having that strategic mindset versus the restrictive mindset. So let's get into strategy number 1. The first strategy or tip, I guess you can call it, is to get off your butt, right? Simple. So just because it's a holiday doesn't mean you should be using this as an excuse to sit around all day and be lazy. You should obviously be relaxing and enjoying quality time with your family, but I promise if you wake up and get a workout in, or even just go for a 30-minute walk before the day even starts, so on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day, you will feel so much better as the day goes on. And this will kind of create this domino effect, right? If you start the day off with some movement, some exercise, get those endorphins going, that's just going to, cascade into the rest of the day. The domino effect is what I call it. So obviously on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, usually gyms are closed, especially right now. Most gyms are closed, but you still have 2 things, right? You have your body and you have a living room. Most people have that, hopefully, or backyard, whatever it is. And that is all you need, right? So you can absolutely get a great body weight workout in. Again, it doesn't even have to be that. It could be a walk outside. Maybe you take your family on a walk, whatever it is. That is probably going to be the best way to start the day. And that's what I would highly recommend. If you do need some workout ideas for at home, I actually have a free PDF on my website. I will link it in the show notes, but if you go to metflexlife.com/home-travel-workouts, you can actually download a bunch of free at-home workouts that you just use your body weight for. So definitely check that out if you need some ideas for body weight workouts. And then also, if you do have resistance bands, and this is what I do usually when I'm traveling, is I take my resistance bands with me and I follow a workout from my Kickstart program, which is one of the exercise programs I have on my website. It's a 12-week program, and it's basically just all resistance band based workouts. So definitely check that out. I will link both of those in the show notes so you can check them out. So that would be probably the first tip. And then on top of that too, I just want to mention overall movement in general. So just being aware of your movement throughout the day can be super helpful. So another thing I recommend is going for a pre or post meal walk. That's probably the easiest way to get some extra steps in. And again, you can make this a family affair and take a walk around the neighborhood either before you sit down for the big meal or after. And then another thing is stop sitting, right? So make a conscious decision to stand more throughout the day. And this, you might not think this makes a big difference, but it does. And I'm going to talk about this in a second. But the easiest way to do this is just, if you're enjoying appetizers or, drinks around your kitchen counter, instead of sitting on the stool, just stand. If you're, sitting around the living room, or your family sitting around the living room, just enjoying each other's company, talking, drinking, whatever it is, just stand up. Again, you don't think this makes a big difference, but I'm going to give you a quick example and do a little bit of math here. So let's say the average person burns 1 calorie per minute sitting and 2 calories per minute standing. Well, that jump from 1 calorie to 2 calories seems pretty small. It actually equates to burning an extra 60 calories per hour, right? If you're standing the majority of the day rather than sitting, let's say you're standing for 6 hours, right? And standing for that 6 hours instead of sitting for that 6 hours, you've just knocked out an extra 360 calories, which is roughly equivalent to a slice of pie or a few cookies. Obviously, this is just an example, but as you can see, small variations in daily movement, one of the easiest being standing versus sitting, can definitely add up and make a difference throughout your day. Again, we're talking calories here, but it does, and it's obviously going to be different from person to person, the amount of calories that you burn standing versus sitting, but this is kind of just giving you a way to kind of quantify what that looks like. So I would definitely recommend, just be conscious of your movement. Be conscious of not sitting so much throughout the day and, standing a little bit more. So that's the first tip, is be aware of your movement and get off your butt. Tip number 2, or strategy number 2, would be implement fasting. So intermittent fasting is a great tool, and especially when it comes to the holidays. So there's different ways that you can go about, implementing fasting depending on what works for you and what's realistic for your personal situation. But probably the most common way to go about this is to fast for most of the morning, so that when you do get to the main meal of the day, whether that's in the afternoon or the evening, you haven't already consumed like a ton of calories. So this is just a good way to kind of push more calories to that main meal so that you can enjoy it without going too overboard. Or, every family is different. If, your family is enjoying a holiday breakfast and you want to partake in that, you could also plan on fasting for a period of time the day before and or the day after. So there's tons of different ways to kind of go about incorporating intermittent fasting around your schedule. The key is to really find a way that is realistic for you and that also won't cause too much extra stress, because we do know sometimes implementing fasting can be a stress in itself. So I would say the biggest thing with this is just find a method or strategy that works for you and will fit into kind of your family schedule for that holiday period of time, whether it's, that whole 3 days, you can kind of structure before and after, or maybe the day of, you can structure fasting in the morning. So yeah, it all just depends, what works for you, but implementing intermittent fasting can be a really great tool to use. And I would definitely suggest it for tip number 2. So the third tip or strategy would be balancing your weekly calories. So this kind of goes into what I mentioned before with fasting, but we know this, I've talked about this so many times, but we know that calories don't just reset overnight, right? So you should really be thinking about your caloric intake on a weekly basis. I say this all the time. So your average weekly intake and even your monthly intake is what really matters when it comes to any goals that you have in terms of losing, maintaining, gaining weight, whatever it may be. The daily fluctuations, obviously we want to, pay attention to that daily intake, but the overall caloric intake on a weekly basis and even a monthly basis is really what matters most. So the reality is you will probably be eating more than normal on the big day. And in order to kind of balance that out, you'll want to cycle your calories for the week, or you can cycle your calories for the week. So this really isn't rocket science, and you don't have to get into too much math here, but you could just eat, a few hundred calories less on the days leading up to the big event or the big day, and then even eat a few hundred calories less a few days after, right? So this is, again, it's just another strategy, and that is what we're kind of talking about here. What are strategies and tools that we can implement to kind of balance things out, so we're not going too overboard, but we can also enjoy ourselves and not, be super stringent, at the same time. Okay, so strategy number 4, or tip number 4, would be protein first. So you all know that I'm a huge fan of protein. And so this is another kind of key strategy or tool to use and to implement strategically, so that I feel like I've said strategy like 10 times already, but protein is, we know that it's one of the most satiating nutrients, right? So before you touch any other type of food, I would say make sure that you've eaten at least 2 to 3 palm-sized portions of protein. So again, protein is the most satiating and filling nutrient. So if you can get a good amount in before eating anything else, you will naturally feel fuller faster. So this is a good strategy. If you have your big Thanksgiving plate and you have a bunch of turkey on there or meat or whatever it is, eat that first and then eat, the other sides or the other things that might be a little bit more calorie dense, carb or fat heavy. So that would be tip number 4. I also have a bunch of other resources on my website pertaining to the benefits of protein. So I will link those in the show notes. And then I do have an ultimate protein cheat sheet, which I put together a few months ago, which you can download. It's just a free download. So I will link that in the show notes as well if you want to get an idea of different protein sources. I kind of break it up into lean protein sources, ones that are a little bit more fattier, and just kind of giving you an overall breakdown of protein in general. So definitely check that out. Tip number 5 would be volume veggies. So unless you're following like a carnivorous type diet, I'd recommend definitely loading up on non-starchy veggies along with your protein that I just talked about in the last tip. So this will ensure you're keeping your belly full and naturally help you to eat less of the higher calorie foods that are around. So if you're not in control of the groceries for the big day, which many of us tend to not be, especially if we are, traveling or eating at a family member's house or whatever it is, no problem. Take a quick trip to the grocery store the day before, pack a big Ziploc bag with low-cal veggies or non-starchy veggies. This is literally what I do for pretty much every holiday gathering that I go to. I like to bring my own things just to ensure that I am prepared. So for lower calorie veggies or, non-starchy veggies that I can munch on, I like to have celery, cucumbers, snap peas, cherry tomatoes, and bell pepper slices. Those are kind of my 5 go-tos. And you can also use these for like lower calorie appetizer dips to replace the chips and the crackers. That's one thing that I always do. Usually the dips and things that are around, like those are things that I really, really enjoy. But the crackers and the chips, they're just kind of a vehicle to eat the dip. So if I can implement the strategy of having these, cucumber slices or snap peas or bell pepper slices to, consume those dips versus the chips and the crackers that are usually higher calorie and also higher carb, then that helps me to save some more calories for the main meal. And the main meal is something that I enjoy even more than those crackers and chips. So it all comes down to balancing like what's worth it for you and what's not, right? So if you're someone who absolutely loves chips and crackers and that's something that you enjoy and you'd rather consume that versus consuming more of like, I don't know, the stuffing or the mac and cheese at the main meal, then go for it. But it's all just kind of balancing the day in general and balancing the meal and balancing the things that you're consuming so that you can, so that you can take the steps to not overdo it when we're talking about total intake for the day, right? So that's the biggest thing here is like we're trying to control as many variables as possible so that we're not going kind of off the deep end and consuming tons and tons and tons of extra calories that day, which makes us usually feel like crap the next day. So again, this is just another tool, another strategy. Another thing is you can this is something that I do too, is bring like a bag of spinach or other green veggies to have alongside the main meal. So again, I'll use that and I'll put a bunch of my protein on top of that. I'll eat all of that first so that my belly is full. And then when I want to enjoy maybe some of the like higher calorie foods like, mac and cheese or stuffing or the cookies and cake afterwards, like I'm already so full off of the protein and the veggies that I'm only going to have like a few tastes of those or a few bites, and I'm much less likely to kind of overdo it with those. So that would be tip number 5. And this kind of brings me also to tip number 6, which is bring your own. So you are in control of what you put into your mouth. Just because you may be celebrating at a relative's house or a friend's house, it doesn't mean that you have to only eat what they serve, right? You should be able to take control and stop caring about what other people think. Plan to bring food that you know fits within your goals. So you might not end up eating it, but having it there to fall back on is an absolute must, especially when you have specific goals in mind that you want to stick to. So again, it comes back to that preparation and that strategy side of things. If you fail to prepare, you're going to prepare to fail. Or you're going to prepare to fail. Fail to prepare to fail. So pack extra veggies, as I mentioned above, and don't forget to bring some extra protein sources as well, just in case. Again, you might not eat these, but just having them there for a backup plan or something, that you just have so that you feel comfortable going into, if you feel comfortable going over to your relative's house or whatever it is, knowing that you have something that you are absolutely in control of can be actually super, super, it can be a big stress reliever, right? Especially when the hunger hits and all of the things are around, all of the high calorie foods are around. And if you're trying to manage that, having something of your own that you can control is very important. So some of the easy and convenient protein options that I like to always have on hand are deli meat, jerky, tuna packets, hard-boiled eggs, protein bars, protein powders. Those are super easy and convenient. And then this also goes for alcoholic beverages, right? So if you know that you want to enjoy a few drinks, which is absolutely fine, make sure that you have maybe some low sugar or low calorie mixers on hand. And you can, again, bring your own. So things like flavored seltzers, zero sugar drinks like Zevia, flavored electrolyte packets. I like Ultima Replenisher is one of the brands that I use a lot. Those are the things that I'll have on hand, right? If I want to have some alcoholic beverages and I want to make sure that I'm controlling kind of those extra calories that come along with that, I can, and even the extra carbs and things like that, I can manage that by bringing my own things, right? And then you can also plan to bring in your own recipe, right? So something that you know that fits your goals, but is still really, really tasty, and maybe, especially if you're following like a lower carb keto approach, or maybe you're just looking to make a recipe that's super tasty, that's not as high calories as many traditional holiday meals, you can definitely, think about that. So I actually have 2 free ebooks for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I will link those in the show notes so that you can check them out. Again, they're completely free. They're lower carb recipes for both Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I will link them in the show notes. Just go to the website and you'll be able to download the free ebook. All right, 2 more tips. So tip number 7 is drink more water and non-caloric drinks. So this is another volume hack and will be helpful for kind of filling up your belly for the day and throughout the day as you're kind of, sipping on, especially I know like for my family, we have food out all day long, which is going to get me into tip number 8, but sipping on, fizzy drinks can be something that helps to keep your belly full and actually gives you something to do throughout the day while all the other food's around. So instead of munching on food, you're kind of just sipping on like a non-caloric beverage, which is a really good strategy again. So one thing too is to make a goal to down about 8 to 10 or more big glasses of water throughout the day. So make sure you have, again, non-caloric fizzy drinks on hand. The bubbles and the carbonation from those fizzy drinks can help with that, quote unquote fullness factor. Also, I don't normally advocate diet sodas on a regular basis, but if we're being completely honest, I do indulge in Diet Coke every once in a while, especially during the holidays. It is definitely, diet sodas are definitely, excuse my language, a chemical shitstorm, but I do like the taste and I try to make it not such a regular occurrence, but during the holidays, it's something that I do enjoy. And I think, having it in moderation is totally fine, personally. So again, obviously choosing the less chemically, I guess you could say, drinks is probably preferred. I try to stick with the majority of my bubbles coming from like seltzer and sparkling water and things like that. So getting into the last tip number 8. So this is something that I've done in the past that's really, really helped. I've suggested this to many of my clients and they've also said that this helps. So it's implementing the 1 plate per course rule. So again, if your family is anything like mine, there are probably 10 different types of appetizers, side dishes, and desserts that are staring you in the face the entire day, especially on Thanksgiving for me. So instead of letting yourself kind of pick and snack throughout the day, one tip is to find a small plate for appetizers and desserts, and then a large plate for the main meal. So what you'll do is basically allow yourself 1 plate per course. So this gives you the freedom to kind of taste test everything without going way overboard. So for example, if you want to try out, like 8 different types of dips, 7 different side dishes, and maybe 4 different types of pie, that's fine. Fill up your 1 plate for each course and that's it. Walk away. So a small plate for appetizer, maybe a smaller plate for dessert, and then a larger plate for dinner. So that's 3 full plates. And fill those up and, just make that a rule for yourself that you're just going to have those 3 plates and that's it. You're not going to go back for seconds. And that allows you to try out different things while still being able to kind of control your overall portions. And also remember to eat the protein first. So 1 plate rule, that's a really good strategy, or 1 plate per course meal is probably one of my favorite strategies, even though it's the last one. So the overall biggest takeaway from this episode, I would say, is just realizing that strategy and awareness are everything, right? So surviving and enjoying the holidays without going overboard is all about being aware of these different strategies and tools. Do you have to implement every single one? Absolutely not. But just by listening to this podcast and thinking through these things, you're now more aware of how to kind of maneuver the big days, the big day or days, and kind of be in control of your choices a little bit more. So again, strategy, awareness, implementing these different tools, setting yourself up for success, going into the day or going into the week with a plan is probably the best thing that you can do. So hopefully that helped. I hope you enjoy the holidays with your family. And one last shout out to our sponsor for the episode, or all of the episodes for November, UCAN. If you want to check out any of the UCAN products, if you have any other questions about them, you can, or if you want to learn more about them, just go to www.ucan.co/METFLEXLIFE. Again, I'll link that in the show notes, and you can use the discount code METFLEXLIFE for 20% off. All right, I hope you enjoy the holidays. I hope I hope some of these tips helped you to think through what your strategy is going to be. If you want to reach out on social media and let me know if you have any other tips that maybe I missed, I would definitely appreciate that. And I'll be sure to share those out as well. All right, I will see you next time.